Kia ora everyone, my name's Zach, I love rugby, welcome back to Hakatime Rugby. Guys, I've just seen reports that Michael Hooper is set to be omitted from the Wallabies World Cup squad. The 33-man squad announced tonight, 6:30 PM Australian time, which would call a close to his career and is huge news coming out of the Wallabies camp. There is so much, focus on Eddie Jones, what he is doing, his playing style, that this just throws up some interesting talking points, but the articles are suggesting that he is unfit or suffering an injury cloud and is therefore they're opting for a safer approach in terms of their selections. And we're seeing this kind of approach with a lot of other teams as well as they are selecting their teams. But Michael Hooper, a very, very experienced player, I think his omission from the squad would be huge news coming out of the Wallabies camp. But let's take a quick look at this article and see what it covers. So, celebrated 125 test great Michael Hooper likely to be omitted. A lingering calf injury is the potential cause, as it states here. Eddie Jones will name his team in Darwin this afternoon, and Fraser McWright is favoured at that starting number 7 spot. I think what's interesting about Fraser McWright is he offers a similar playing style to Michael Hooper, albeit he is younger and offers a bit more on the edge in attack from Eddie Jones' style of play as well. And this is a really interesting point I might do a full video on, because Eddie Jones is talking a lot about playing an Australian style of rugby. He said a similar thing in his time at England. They're looking at evolving their style and playing a very specific style to their playing group. Now, under the England example, I found it difficult to understand exactly what he meant, because it just looked like organised chaos to some respects in terms of what he was trying to build and the strategy he was throwing up there. Then he comes into Australia, very much shakes things up in terms of young selections that we're seeing with Carter Gordon and Tate McDermott. And this looks like he's going in a similar kind of pathway, opting for the younger players that offer just a bit more of an attacking threat. So back to this point around what is Australian rugby, or what is the Australian rugby brand that he's trying to build, it looks to me more like a rugby league style of play is how I'm sort of seeing things. We're seeing Tom Hooper pop up closer to the edges. We're seeing also Fraser McWright pop up on the edges as well. So he's got these back rowers or second rowers in rugby league terms running as edge attackers. So that's an interesting thing that just made me think that's a rugby league structure of attack. What we're also seeing is the wingers looking for a lot more work straight up the middle of the field. Again, that's something that's taken from rugby league. Mark Nawanga-Nitawasi was able to find breaks directly up the middle, offloading for his fullback there, Callaway, to score, tries up the middle or breaks up the middle. So we're seeing that kind of structure in place. Another one that I'm seeing is the likes of Samu Kerevi is being used more as a blindside playmaker or a second receiving playmaker. So that's very much in the mold of a standoff in rugby league. So when he's talking about the Australian style of rugby, the brand of rugby that they're trying to build, it looks to me like he's adopting a lot from rugby league. I could be wrong, and maybe I'll do a full video strategically on how this is playing out, but that's what I see at the moment, is a lot more edge attack for these Lucies, a lot more of a higher work rate up the middle with the wingers getting involved, and a bit more of a second receiving playmaker from Samu Kerevi or from the centres to expose and find the edges. So interesting stuff. As I say, we will do a full video on that. Anything else that we want to cover in here? A speedy return was initially forecast, but Hooper's recovery was slower than expected. Jones first revealed after the Bledisloe Cup game at the MCG that Hooper was no certainty to make the Rugby World Cup, given the doubts about his calf injury. So the options now going forward for Michael Hooper. He is looking at 3 options. One is retirement. The other is to take an overseas contract. And then the third is to potentially play for the Australian Sevens team at the Olympics. So it'll be interesting what he decides to do. But after 125 tests, this would be an interesting way for him to go out. It's unfortunate that it is injury driven, but I think that provides an interesting, let's say, excuse for Eddie Jones if he is looking at adopting this faster brand of rugby, the Australian brand of rugby that he talks about so much. I'm going to keep it there, guys. I just wanted to keep this one brief, give you my thoughts. Let's see what happens later today, and enjoy the rest of the rugby.